It is Mock Draft Monday, and today we are switching things up because we're going to do a 2-round post NFL Combine mock draft for you guys to tell you who we think the Chargers should pick at 17 and 48 in the upcoming NFL draft and how the Combine has changed things, all in today's Locked On Chargers podcast.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. We've been covering the Chargers for over 6 seasons, but this is our 5th as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. What's up, guys? Thank you for making us your first listen. As always, we very much appreciate it. And to make sure you never miss the show, subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also find the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. We have a lot to get into today, David, because it is Mock Draft Monday, and since the Combine just wrapped up, we wanted to do a post-Combine 2-round mock draft for the Chargers, who they will take at 17 and 48. And we have some really good options to choose from. We're going to pick multiple guys. We're going to go 2 segments. We're going to give our pick and then a backup pick for each guy, or for each pick, right? 17 and 48. So a lot of prospects we're going to be talking about today, and also talking about how the Combine changed things to wrap up the show and how guys have been moving around with some crazy athletic times at the NFL Scouting Combine. But today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, David, well, it's time to roll out our first official mock draft. Or I guess this is Mock Draft Monday, so we've been talking about a ton of prospects. But today we're actually doing a 2-round mock draft, seeing how everything fits together, seeing who is going to be available in these mock draft simulators and all the mock drafts going around, especially after the Combine. So it all starts with 17. Will the Chargers do something to help out Justin Herbert in the offense, or will they attack the area of a much bigger concern? And that is the defensive side, trying to add impact players on the defensive side. And we've talked about a ton of prospects. We know there should be a prospect at 17 the Chargers should feel good about picking there. So, David, with everything that's gone on, with all the 40 times, with all the fluctuations, with everything going on in the Combine, you're rolling it out with the first pick of our NFL mock draft season. Who are you going with at pick 17?
At pick number 17 in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Chargers select Andrew Booth Jr., cornerback, Clemson. I'm still on my favorite guy, Daniel. I mean, it hasn't changed my mind up to this point. He was available in the mock draft. This is the guy who's going to come in right away, and he is an absolute animal. He is a dog. He has great physicality, very great speed. He's very smart. He can recover. Like, this is a guy who's going to come in and make the Chargers defense better immediately.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, be upset with that pick. And that's who I went with as well. We didn't talk about it before. We went through our picks. We did it through the Draft Network's mock draft simulator. And certain guys are going to be available on different ones, right? And we'll use some different ones. But to me, he was the obvious pick there with who was left on the board. I mean, we've seen other guys go much earlier, especially after the Combine. And in mine, most of the big time edge rushers were gone. So that was a big part of it as well. And Trent McDuffie, the other 2 big time corners, Derek Stingley and obviously Sauce, they were both off the board. So that's also who I went with. And I think it's the playmaking ability that you love. And I think the other part of it is at the Combine, he didn't end up running the 40. So I think that obviously he didn't get like a major shift at the Combine, meaning he's probably more likely at this point, because he did strain a quad. He will try to perform at his pro day, so we'll see if that changes anything. But if he's banged up, he can only hurt his stock by doing that. So maybe he gets to the Chargers there. I think it is a good pick because obviously, David, at that position, taking a corner at the first round, is some talent later on, and we'll get to some of those guys. But when you have a guy like that with the kind of ball production that he has, with how he would fit with the Chargers defense, I think you have to take the lead.
Yeah, I mean, that's why is such honestly an easy decision for me, just based off of who is still on the board. Looking at the Chargers' needs, like I said, we've talked about on this show before, you feel very good about 2 corners. Actually, you feel good about 1 corner, I say, probably Asante Samuel Jr. And I think you feel like Michael Davis has the potential to be the corner that you want him to be, has all the physical traits and all of that. You just have to get things to click with all the different techniques that he's going to have to go out there and execute in this Brandon Staley defense. But adding another corner who is going to come in and be a ball hawk, who's going to be physical against the run, who is going to help you go out there and execute your defense and really allow you to be very multiple as well. This is going to allow you to be even deeper in the secondary. And corners are expensive. I mean, when they get to their first contract, they're sitting, if they're good, if they're in the top 10, top 15 at their position, they're looking at 17, 18, 20 plus million per season. So to get a good high quality corner on a rookie contract, a cost controlled contract, that's always a win for me.
Yeah, and you're getting a guy that loves to tackle as well. Obviously, that's something that has hurt the Chargers in the past, and that's something that probably improves their run defense as well. He can be a little bit reckless, because he's going 100%. But
Yeah.
you love that, want to there. You love his ability in short areas to, if he has to break on things in front of him, be able to stay with shiftier receivers. He did that all at Clemson. I mean, he
Love's
was
ability
hard to
as a
get away with.
blitzer as well can get after the quarterback.
Yeah, and I mean, you didn't see him get beat deep a lot. You saw, pretty solid fundamentals and technique from him, with also not panicking when the ball is in the air, being able to make plays in the deep third of the field, which is something Brandon Staley talked about in the last draft process, right? Going into the 2021 draft, wanting guys who didn't panic in those situations. And that's, something that definitely hurt the Chargers, especially down the stretch with guys not being ready in those situations. But David, obviously things changed quickly. He could not be there, and you can't really rule anyone out, when Rashawn Slater falls to you at 13. But we did want to have a backup plan as well. So who did you have for your backup pick at 17, just in case Andrew Booth Jr. isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, looking at my mock draft, I mean, there were several really good players that were still available after the Chargers picked at 17. Guys like Nakobe Dean that went to the Pats at 21, like Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver who went to the Raiders at 22. Jordan Davis went 24th. But the guy for me that went 19th to the Eagles, which is crazy. It seems like the Eagles have like 5 picks in the first round. But it's George Karlaftis, the defensive end. Still want to bring in a guy who's going to come in immediately and help your football team. The Chargers need another pass rusher, a guy that you can really feel good about adding to the mix. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with Uchenna? They could bring him back. They could not. If he's asking for 10 to 13 million per year, it might not happen, right? So you have to have a backup plan, have a contingency plan. George Karlaftis, a phenomenal motor, really, really good hand usage with a fantastic quick inside move. And he has the power to and the ability to set the edge. George Karlaftis is a guy you put in right away, plug and play, and know you're going to get some production as a pass rusher.
Yeah, I like that pick too. And I think I'm kind of in the same, I'm kind of the same with you on that, just as far as like, if one of those really, top elite pass rushers falls to you, if a Jermaine Johnson falls to you, right, at 17, you jump on that. A guy who's
Absolutely.
ready made to come, going to, immediately improve your run defense, and has shown so much in the, preseason, the postseason kind of events where he's shown a lot in his pass rush moves as well. And I think that's somebody who, if he's there at 17, you go take him. If George Karlaftis is there, that's a guy that you feel really good about, like his plug and play ability. He's not the
Yeah.
flashiest of those edge rushers,
No.
but he has real time power, right? He's going to help you in that aspect. He's going to make you more physical up front, while also being a menace as a pass rusher as well. Has a lot of tools in that bag. Just doesn't have, I think, the flair, which could potentially drop him a little bit, because he had the production at Purdue. He definitely has the, moments on tape where you're like, that's a guy you want to take. And for the Chargers, it makes sense. And you're knocking one of those big needs kind of off of your list, right? If you take a corner, you knock that need off of your giant, wish list, because that's a position you need. And you're feeling like you got a really good player there. If one of those edge rushers drops, I think you're feeling the same way. I think you feel like, okay, we just found a premier guy that we wouldn't be able to find in the second round. We couldn't come close to that kind of player in the second round. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking to get the most talent possible. And it might be a corner or an edge rusher, but you still would have big needs, like a defensive tackle, right? At this point, you need some more physicality. You're not taking Jordan Davis in this round, right? In this situation. So we will talk about who we mocked to the Chargers in the second round right after this, because we do have to tell you guys that there is something that makes me feel like Jordan Davis, right? And it's when I eat a Built Bar, because it makes me feel like watching Jordan Davis run a 4.78 40-yard dash at the combine. I mean, when I eat Built Bars, I feel I can get through that wall, run through a brick wall like Jordan Davis most definitely would do, especially when I get off of work and I'm prepping for the podcast and I need something to get me through the day. The best protein bar on the planet is Built Bar. And that is one of the things I can eat where I just finally give me that extra push to get what I need to do done. And I love Built Bars because there's so many great flavors to choose from. Peanut butter brownie, my favorite. Cookies and cream, another one of my favorite. But you could also go coconut almond. You could go mint brownie. You could go cherry barcia. And you're getting something that fits on your diet while also feels like a cheat meal, right? You can get those great flavors while getting something that's packed with protein. Most bars have 17 grams of protein, and they have less than 4 grams of net sugar and 4 grams of net carbs or less. When you're getting something that's a treat that actually fits on your diet, especially with the monotony of what a lot of diets have, you're jumping all over that. And you guys can save some money since you listen to the Locked On Chargers podcast. You can get 15% off by going to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off. That's promo code LOCKED15, all caps, one word, for 15% off at built.com. All right, David, well, we're going into the second round of our first official mock draft of the 2022 offseason. And I think we liked our picks, right? And obviously things can change quickly, but I think in the first round, we feel like we got better, right? And we're hitting these needs. And a lot of the things that have to do with this are what the other teams need. Like you talked about the Eagles. That's what's so hard. It's like they could really screw you because they picked the 2 picks right ahead of you. And they do have some needs that match up with what the Chargers' needs are, right? They could be targeting the same group of players. But to make sure you know what every team needs, especially this time of year, make sure you follow the Locked On NFL podcast so you can get all of the experts from around the Locked On Podcast Network and get a feel for what those teams actually need. Because a lot of the things I see, especially in these national mock drafts, is like, I don't know if these, people trying to cover every team in the NFL really have a good grasp of what every team's needs are. So I do think we know what the Chargers needs would be, especially with who we took in the first round. Andrew Booth Jr., really, really solid pick and someone who helps you immediately defensively. Now you're looking for the next positional need, David, and also trying to get the best player available. So when you were going through the Draft Network's mock draft simulator, who fell to you in the second round that you had to pull the trigger on?
Yeah, I mean, in the first round, you hear the Jordan Davis name, and everyone's on that hype train, especially after his performance at the combine. He looked like a freak. Obviously, fantastic what he was able to put out there. But to me, he's a 2-down guy. He's a guy that's going to come in the first and second down. In the first round, I just couldn't pull the trigger on that. In the second round, now we're speaking a different language and having a different conversation, and so that's why, when Travis Jones was there at 48, it was time for me to pull the trigger on that because that is a gigantic need for the Chargers. They need someone who's going to come in, be that run stuffer, who's going to be a menace, who's okay with doing the dirty work, who's okay with getting in there and being disruptive in the running game. That's exactly what he is. He's powerful, he's disruptive, and he is relentless. And in the second round, I think the value meets the pick. That's why I took Travis Jones.
Yeah, and we use the Draft Network mock draft simulator, so he fell to both of us. I did see him go ahead sometimes. So I mean, he definitely is a guy that could, really push himself, ahead of where the Chargers are going to pick in the second round. Because just like Jordan Davis, I mean, it's hard to compare those two just because like Jordan Davis is one of one. Like you're just not going to get that size and athleticism. But you have to be thrilled with how Travis Jones tested, especially. I mean, maybe not so much, I guess, if you're a Chargers fan, because he ran a 4.92 at his size, pushing 320 plus pounds. So, like, he's a dude who's freakishly athletic as well and would fill a huge need for you at nose tackle and let you go get a guy like Andrew Booth Jr. in the first round. So, I also had him because he fell into my lap there. We also have to, realize that, just as because it always happens, David. We like guys. We're like, hey, this guy's thought about it as like a third round pick, and then they go shred the Senior Bowl, they shred the combine, and now it's like I don't even know if the Chargers can get him there. But then you also had Rashawn Slater and Asante Samuel Jr. fall to you last year, so that was my pick there, especially in this first round of mocks that we're doing, because the fit makes too much sense. You're finding a guy who's instantly going to help you at least on first and second down. And I mean, definitely has at least a little potential as far as third down, but not a lot of pass rush going on there. But you're getting a physically dominant player. But that combine could have really pushed him, out of reach for the Chargers, David. So when it came back around to you in the second round, when you were trying to think of someone you would take, if it didn't end up being Travis Jones at 48, who did you end up with?
Well, before I get into that, I just want to, talk about a couple of the guys that were taken just before the Chargers picked. That was very, very annoying to me. Petrie, the safety, yeah, he went to the Falcons at 43. Perion Winfrey, he went to the Ravens at 45. I was like, man, those are a couple of guys that if they were there, I really would have to, sincerely think about pulling the trigger on that. But one of the guys that was taken after the fact that I wouldn't mind in the second round is the offensive tackle Bernard Rainman out of Central Michigan.
Raymond, yeah.
Yeah, Raymond, excuse me. He's
You called him the
gigantic.
Rain Man, like he was going to
Yeah.
start counting things up at the blackjack table.
Hey, I mean, this is a new nickname, Rain Man.
High
Six
football
foot
IQ.
7, 305 pounds. The biggest concern for me is that he just transitioned to tackle while he was actually in college. He came into college as a tight end, then he transitioned to tackle. But he has that frame you're looking for. He has a very strong anchor. When he gets his hands on you, that's it. You're not going anywhere. And this is a guy who has a lot of potential. He's still learning at the position. I think you get him in front of NFL coaches, get him next to some of those great offensive linemen the Chargers have now. I think that's only going to rub off on him. And in the second round, I like the value there. Put him at right tackle. I think he would fit in nicely with what the Chargers are trying to do.
Yeah, and I think he's more of a second round prospect. If I'm, feeling out the tackle class and going to that second tier
Yeah,
after the guys who are all going to go before the Chargers pick for sure, I think that's obviously much better. Daniel Jeremiah had him at, to the Chargers in his first ever mock this season. He had this guy going 17 to the Chargers. The only other thing too is just his age. Like he's going to be a 25-year-old rookie. So
yeah.
like that's the other thing, especially coming from another country, getting into the scene late. But how can you not be impressed with what that dude's done? Being a tight end, being able to add the mass it takes to be a tackle, and then being able to go out and actually do it at a very high level. I mean, I like that pick there. Luckily for me, Jalen Petrie did fall in mine. He did end up
You
getting to
man,
48. And he didn't work out. He didn't run a 40 at the combine, I should say. So he didn't really, have any kind of thing that really wowed people, I think, at the combine that would genuinely, raise or lower his draft stock. I do think that if he does a pro day at Baylor, maybe he changes some of those things because, I mean, he shows a freakish kind of athletic traits on tape. So, and to me, it's a safety, right? That's what he's going to be labeled. But he's really more of a slot corner. I mean, the position that he played at Baylor was literally the star position. That's something that's in Brandon Staley's defense, 80% of the time when they're
yeah,
on the
he's a
field. So,
defensive back, right? He's a guy that can play multiple different positions on the field, and you feel good about wherever you're going to put him.
yeah. And I mean, I do wonder about his frame. He doesn't have the biggest frame. He's not the biggest dude, under
Right,
200 pounds.
right.
But he doesn't tackle like it, right? He's a great tackler. He's a great
Yeah,
blitzer, right? 17 and a half tackles for loss last season for Baylor. Can be your money dime linebacker guy, can be your star, be your slot corner. And he immediately boosts the athleticism in your secondary. He boosts the tackling and run defense in your secondary. You get a better blitzer than having, Chris Harris Jr., for example, coming off the edge. That's, I think, a dream scenario for the Chargers at that pick, especially, if they don't go Travis Jones.
yeah. I mean, like I said, in my mock draft, he did not fall to me. He was taking a couple of picks before me, and I was a little upset about that. So to see that he was available in yours is awesome because I think this is a player that we both agree that fits very nicely in the Chargers defense, fits in what Brandon Staley is trying to do on his defense. He has said multiple times that he wants his defense to be multiple. He wants to be able to do a lot of different things, and you want to get more of those positionless players out there so you can really be as multiple as you want. You want to confuse the offense, you want to stress them out, you want to make them think more than they want to. And having guys that can go out there and play multiple different positions on the field is how you're going to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, this whole time I've been consistent, adding impact defensive players. Like, obviously, the
Yes.
Petrie pick looks a lot different. If you take Andrew Booth Jr., right, if you go corner, fill that need in the first round, it's a
Yeah.
little different, because you already took a defensive back. You took someone that could potentially take some snaps there. But if you end up getting an edge rusher in the first round, one of those dudes, and then you come back and get this guy and then, have money in free agency, obviously, maybe they fill the defensive tackle position with some young, exciting players. I mean, that feels like a shift defensively if somehow they're able to pull something like that off, right? Because that is just something, it seems unlikely, but it would be great.
But you look at all of these picks, all the picks that we've made, and you can definitely see needs. In the first round, if you're able to get Andrew Booth Jr., and then in the second round, you come back and you're able to get Travis Jones, you fill two very important needs that are obvious needs for the Chargers. And even if those guys aren't there, and you go George Karlaftis in the first round, and in the second round, you get Rainman, right tackle and edge are very, very important. There are holes at the moment. There are still positions that need to be addressed. All of these guys, if you're able to get them, are going to help your football team.
Yeah, it seems like it at least, right? I mean, the draft is a crapshoot,
Of
but
course.
those are the guys. I mean, when you talk about guys you'd get excited about, we'd be pretty excited about all those players. And in those mock draft simulators, really talented running backs, to make
A
it a little
lot
bit
of them.
tempting. Guys like Brees Hall,
Yeah.
that would be really tempting in the second round. It's not your biggest need, but one of those guys, game changing running back to, complement Austin Eckler. Doesn't seem like the smartest roster construction, but it does seem like something that would definitely help the Chargers offense. And that's, I think, where a lot of those guys are going to go around that 48th pick, from 40 to 60, probably a few running backs going there, at least how it's shaking out right now. But the Lockdown NFL draft crew did get together and put together a first round mock where the Chargers go with Jameson Williams. But we're going to talk about some other questionable things from that draft and maybe some other players. If we got to that point in their mock draft simulator, we would jump on and said, and the hype around Jordan Davis and everything else that came out around the combine, because it is a crapshoot, David. But some guys definitely, by being fast, really, really raised their draft stock, but still could be a little bit risky. But when I'm feeling a little bit frisky, I go to betonline.net, my favorite betting sponsor, obviously the sponsor of the Locked On Chargers podcast. And I mean, there's so many combine bets that you can go on there and do right now for the NFL combine as it wraps up. But that was a lot of fun. They do creative things like that all the time. It's one of the things I really enjoy about betonline.net, because my favorite time of the year, March Madness, right? The Super Bowl, when you can get some crazy prop bets, when you can bet on some big underdogs. Nothing screams underdogs like March Madness. So betonline.net is the number one place you want to be for March Madness, for when these 14 seeds, upset the 3 seed, and you guys can cash in because there's so many great tournaments they have going on right now. So many great prop bets. And it's not just basketball, it's not just football. You can go find boxing, NHL, UFC, some crazy fights there. Another place where you can cash in on some big underdogs as well. And you're going to find the best odds, lines, and props in the business. So make sure you guys check out betonline.net so you guys can change your gaming experience and especially add some juice to some of these non-football sports as we wait to get back to the football season at BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, David, we talked about our initial mock draft, a 2-round mock draft, but we also have some great guys over at the Locked On NFL Draft Show, where I definitely go to see how they're feeling about guys. Former NFL player Eric Crocker, one of the hosts, somebody Chargers fans, and especially if you're fans of this show, are familiar with Ryan Tracy, host of the Locked On Chiefs. Those guys are putting the work in right now, and I appreciate everything that they're doing. We would go a little bit differently with the draft we're going to talk about right now, because they did come out with their post-combine mock draft where they ended up going with Jameson Williams, a wide receiver, and that's been such a hot button issue for the Chargers. Do you go and try to find a game-changing wide receiver in the first round instead of attacking your bigger needs on defense? So, David, first of all, I mean, just what is your reaction to that pick at 17 with Jameson Williams?
I'm not a huge fan. I'm not gonna lie. It's not the first player that I'm looking at. Even with the group of players that are available in this mock draft at 17 for the Chargers, I understand it to a point. You want to get as many weapons as you possibly can for the Chargers, and you want to get some speed. And Jameson Williams has speed for sure. I mean, there's no question about that. But I mean, there's also some question marks for me as well. And at 17, I don't really feel comfortable with the pick there. I just think that if you're looking for speed and you want to add that element to your roster, to your wide receiver group, I think you can do that later on in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been very interesting to see what his 40 time was, right? Because he's one of the big ones we didn't get to see. And he probably would have ran like a 4.24 and then had it changed to like a 4.32, something like that with the official time. Because Chris
So
Olave
bad.
almost was the number one pick for a second after his unofficial 4.26 40 at the combine. And that was definitely kind of a mess over there with those times,
What a
because that
huge
was like,
difference. My goodness.
it is. And I mean, honestly, I think that like Chris Olave running a 4.9 is disgusting. Or 4.39 is disgusting. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
still
running a
really
sub
unfair.
4.40 for that dude with how smooth he is and his route running skills.
Well,
Like,
not only that, but Ohio State having two guys that are running under 4.4 with Garrett Wilson joining him. That is ridiculous.
and both those guys would be tempting at this pick if you're gonna make the leap and say wide receiver. And a guy like Traylon Burks follows because that 40 time doesn't match up, with his game speed. And like, you care more about game speed, right? But that
Yeah.
4.55 40 is definitely something that I think alarmed a lot of people out there. And I mean, obviously, we were never on, we never thought he was going to run a 4.3. I think for a dude his size, it's super impressive how quick he is. And I do think his game tape is faster than, what his 40
Some
time
people
was. But
test well, some people are game time performers, and
yeah.
I'm more on the Traylon Burks being a game time performer. When the
Well,
lights
and
are
that's
on
the thing
bright,
about
he
Olave
shows up.
too, like, right? Because like we've seen how dominant he was. Like his
Mhm.
speed, even if he ran a 4.5, like the dude still
Yeah.
would have probably been a borderline first round pick, But when you see that kind of top end speed, sub 4.40, I mean that's pretty impressive. Like, and
Yeah,
it definitely
with
makes you
his
think
route
of
running
things.
ability, that is crazy.
But we did get to see, also other guys, really shoot up after the combine, and one of those guys is Jordan Davis, and I mean he deserves a moment here because that dude put on an absolute show at the combine. Like, not just for a nose tackle, for a defensive lineman, for any player, really. I mean, we talked about RAS, the relative athletic score that gets put out there that, tracks everybody going throughout the combine. The dude got a 10. He got a 10. It's a scale 1 to 10.
He got a Thanos score.
He got a 10. Like everything he tested in was great. Like his get off, his 10-yard split, his 20-yard split, his 40 time. The dude ran a 4.78 40
Which
at
is faster than
341
Patrick
pounds.
Mahomes, just to let you know.
Oh, I mean, that's faster than a lot of really
Crazy.
small players, really, a lot of play. That's an insane. Like, I know everyone probably thinks, when they see 4.3s, oh, I could run like a 4.8. No, like you can't.
No,
It's
you
it's
cannot.
so
Yeah.
fast. Like, and that dude did it like it was scary watching him do it. You know what I mean, David? To the point where like we talked about this, and you're like, hey, I can't change my mind what happens at the combine. Like, but we also didn't know like he's being compared to other dudes that like are like 285-pound defensive tackles, right? 275 to 80-pound defensive tackles, 300-pound defensive tackles. Those are the dudes he's historically getting matched up against. And whether it's broad jump, over 10 feet in broad jump, vertical jump, like he's at the top of everything. He's the most athletic defensive lineman basically that was at the combine ever.
Yeah. I mean, after what he did at the combine, it's like, oh my God. I mean, yeah, I did definitely say that I didn't know how much his performance was going to change my mind, but I mean, you can't help but be impressed. I mean,
Sure.
that's absolutely ridiculous.
And
Him
he
running
goes ninth,
faster.
most importantly, in this, right? That's what
Yes.
brings up the conversation. He's going ninth. Like now, he don't even make it to the Chargers. He's going to the Broncos at 9. I do not want to see that dude on the Broncos.
No way. Absolutely not. I don't want to see that dude swallowing up Austin Eckler twice a year. No, thank you. Absolutely not.
Keep that
That
man
would
away
be
from Justin
that would
Herbert.
be absolutely terrible. Thankfully, Justin Herbert ran a 4.61, so he can run away from him. But watching that dude run the 40 is like watching a house or an apartment with rocket ships on his back. Like that's how scary that dude is. Watching him run at you, it's kind of like if you watch Happy Gilmore and you see at the end the large guy with the nail in his head just running
Yeah.
like this. Yeah, that's the feeling that you would have if Jordan Davis was coming after you.
I mean, he's like the size of David Baker, like the guy that was, giving out the Hall of Fame induction, the guy that knocks on the door, that super giant, scary dude. Like in that, like imagine David Baker running a 4.8 240. Like it's just it's
David,
ridiculous. And it just
David
makes
Baker
you
is
rethink
gigantic.
things. It makes you rethink your philosophies, right? Or
You're
is a nose tackle worth taking in the first round? It's like,
it does.
well, he would have to out athletic everybody, right? Like you'd have to overcome his shortcomings, especially as a pass rusher. And like, yeah, maybe he didn't get on the field as a pass rusher because it was that Georgia line that's gonna have multiple first round picks on it, right? It's just like maybe just him overwhelming every offensive line in front of him is enough to warrant that pick, right? Maybe it is
Well, just
overthinking
like
it to
we
just
were
not
talking
take that.
before the show, Daniel, is if he does come in on first and second down and just wreck people and just absolutely eliminate the run and put them in those third and long situations,
Right.
is he worth it then? Hell yeah, I'm gonna have to say yes in that situation.
Yeah, and I mean now there's a good chance he's not even there for the Chargers, but like you don't want to take a defensive tackle, especially a non-pass rushing one in the first round. But like this is the dude that's like a stereotype breaker, right? You can't just
Mhm.
put every nose tackle in one box. And I do think it's like, maybe you just add that dude to your front and then, build out his inconsistencies around that, right? Find other guys who
Yeah,
can do the things he doesn't do well around him and just have that freak in the backfield every single week because that is what that dude is a freak. But
definitely.
looking at the other picks that were available, David, I mean, Andrew Booth Jr. is available, right? If you want to go a different receiver, Traylon Burks was available. Kyle Hamilton was available, which I'm not sure if it was Crocker or Ryan Tracy. I don't know if they alternated on this one, but like that dude is a bona fide. Now, I heard Mina Kimes though to say he might be just the best player in this draft. And I do think that, there's
High
certain
praise.
players, David, as far as like best player available versus need. Like that dude goes 19 in this draft. If you're really going best player available at 17, even when you have Derwin James and you feel good about your safeties, like take that dude. Like, and there's no way, like, I mean,
Well, it's
there's
like
no
a
way you could
Derwin
say you're
James
taking the
situation.
best.
It's
Yeah,
like a Derwin James situation. Like no one expected Derwin James to get out of the top 10, let
sure.
alone be there at 17. So
Right.
when he was available,
And
it
he
was
won't, I
like,
don't think,
yeah,
this time.
he probably won't be. But I mean, if he is there, it's like you run directly to the podium. You don't even
Right.
have to hand the card over to the commissioner. You just announce the pick yourself, and that's it. You call it a day.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Eagles. I mean, man, in this mock draft, they're coming out like a bandit. They get Trayvon Walker at 15, they get Trent McDuffie at 16, and then they get Kyle Hamilton at 19.
Yeah.
Wow, if that is their draft, I mean, I don't even care what they do with the rest of it. Like they already won. Like that would be spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And the one thing that this draft had as well that changes things for the Chargers is 6 edge rushers were off the board when it
Yeah.
came time for them to pick. Jermaine Johnson, Aiden Hutchinson, Thibodeau, Ajabo, Walker, Karloftis, all those dudes are gone. So, like,
Yeah.
also, I think it was 10 out of the first 16 picks were all defensive players as well. I mean, there's going to be a lot of talented defensive players. I don't think there's any way a dude like that falls, but that is one of those situations where even if it's not a need, you take that dude and figure it out. He can be your star. Derwin James can be your star. You'll figure it out because that dude's just that good. Maybe the best defensive player in this draft class. You take a chance, you make it work. And with Brandon Staley, you'd feel pretty good about that. But this is a good look into, the potential reality of, hey, 3 DBs are gone, right? Trent McDuffie's gone in this draft, like you talked about to the Eagles. The 6 edge rushers are gone. I mean, you're looking for premier defensive talent when 9 either corners or edge rushers are off the board when you're picking. That's going to hurt you. I mean, unless a guy like Kyle Hamilton ends up falling. But another thing that came out of the combine was just rumors flying left and right, including rumors about the Chargers and linking them to free agency. So that's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow, including Tuesday's franchise deadline. We are going to know in the next couple of days what the Chargers are going to do with Mike Williams, because if they're not letting him walk out of the building, it's going to be with a franchise tag because there hasn't been a multi-year offer or, re-signing done that we know of at this point. So we'll also talk about kind of give our final predictions on whether Mike will be franchise tagged by the deadline. But that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you guys for making us your first listen as always. And to make sure you never miss the show, subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, especially if you're there now. Go hit that subscribe button and follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. Are free and available on all platforms. And we also post the show out every day to all of our social media. You can hit me up on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports, David Drogmeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD, and the show's Twitter at Locked On LAC. And you can also call into the Locked On Chargers voicemail line at 323-524-7924. Make sure you guys are back here tomorrow to talk about Mike Williams and some other cornerbacks like J.C. Jackson linked to the Chargers at the Combine. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.